Military helicopters have brought a new dimension of mobility to the modern battlefield. This video ordnance program examines the revolutionary effect of helicopters in today's armies. Compared to warplanes, military helicopters look as fragile as dragonflies. Their spindly rotors and delicate landing legs give them the appearance of a giant insect. But helicopters have had a revolutionary impact on the modern battlefield. Their unique means of propulsion allow them to travel where no other military aircraft can go. They need no airfield. They can land in small forest clearings or on the small deck of a storm-tossed ship. The idea of helicopters is nearly as old as that of other types of airplanes. Leonardo da Vinci first dreamed of an early helicopter more than 400 years ago. But practical helicopters came about 40 years after winged aircraft. Experimental helicopters flew in the 1930s, but they still had many technical problems. The first military helicopters came on the scene at the end of World War II. The Germans used small autogyros for observation from submarines. The first successful military helicopters were the American Sikorskys, like the R-4. They were designed by the gifted Russian immigrant Igor Sikorsky. The Sikorsky R-4 saw combat in the jungles of Burma, bringing in supplies and evacuating wounded troops. It wasn't until the Korean War in 1950 that there were enough helicopters to have much effect. In the Korean War, the main role of the helicopter was the evacuation of wounded troops back to MASH hospitals. The French War in Algeria in the 1950s saw the first extensive use of armed helicopters. It was the Vietnam War which proved the value of vertical mobility. The French experiments paved the way for American helicopter operations in Vietnam. The Vietnam War became a helicopter war. Much of Vietnam was covered by rugged mountains, rice paddies, and thick foliage. Roads were few and well suited for ambush. Helicopters could avoid the limits of terrain and enemy actions simply by flying over it. The workhorse of this war was the Bell UH-1, better known as the Huey. The Huey was used in all sorts of roles. It was mainly a troop carrier, but could also be used to evacuate wounded troops. An armed gunship version, nicknamed the Hog, was the forerunner of today's attack helicopters. The Huey also served as the basis for the AH-1 Cobra, the world's first attack helicopter. The military helicopter is slow and fragile. It is vulnerable to rifle and ground fire. Today, its most deadly enemy is the small man-portable missile. But in spite of this, it has become a critical element in all modern armies. Its value rests on its ability to take off and descend vertically. A helicopter can land in any area with enough clearance for its rotor blade. While a jet fighter might need a paved runway over 1,000 feet in length, a helicopter can land on nearly any spot of solid land 30 feet square. The helicopter's propulsion differs fundamentally from that of a fixed-wing airplane. An airplane has wings which supply lift, aided by a propeller or jet engine. The helicopter's large rotor serves both purposes, since it has no wings. The helicopter's vertical mobility makes it ideally suited as a military transporter. It has been an age-old desire of military tacticians to sneak large forces behind heavily defended enemy lines and surprise him where he least expects an attack. In World War II, this was accomplished using paratroopers. Paratroopers could be dropped out of airplanes hundreds of miles behind enemy lines. But it was very risky, and the paratroopers were at the mercy of the winds. The helicopter provides the same ability to move forces behind enemy lines, but allows the military commander to land forces with precision. Once paratroops landed, they had to fight their way out. Helicopters provide the means not only to land troops, but to remove them once they've accomplished their mission. For this reason, the air mobile helicopter forces have gradually replaced paratroopers as the fast, mobile force on the modern battlefield. The helicopter's speed and maneuverability make it an ideal vehicle for scouting and reconnaissance. Helicopters have become the modern equivalent of the mounted cavalry, going out in front of armored divisions to look for enemy forces.
Each division has a divisional cavalry squadron, which is what we are. Our mission, primary mission, is reconnaissance. So we are the eyes and ears of the 1st Cavalry Division. Our mission is to locate the enemy. Ordinarily, we're going to conduct purely reconnaissance and security operations. That's why we're a combined arms team, and we've got our air assets with our air cavalry troops and our ground cavalry troops as well. They always work in conjunction with each other. So our mission basically is to establish contact with the enemy, to report where they are. Ordinarily, it is not to fight, but it often becomes to fight, and that's why we are armed, and we have the attack helicopters like behind us, the gunships. The gunships normally work in support of the scout birds. The scout teams and gun teams go out together. The guns normally support the scouts. Once we report the enemy information, if the decision from above at my level or higher is to kill what you see, then the gunships do that, and they do it real well.
Helicopters are not deterred by terrain. They can easily operate over mountainous areas, swamps, forests, or other features which would stop an armored vehicle. It is this quality that makes helicopters so invaluable as Army scouts.
The aircraft give us a lot more flexibility and mobility on the battlefield. We can go back and forth from division boundaries or brigade boundaries a lot quicker than ground vehicles. We can also check areas a lot quicker than a ground person can do. They could give us 5 areas to check, and we could do that in an hour, while a ground unit may take a whole day to do.
It didn't take long before soldiers began strapping guns on helicopters. The first armed helicopters took to the air with French troops in Algeria. But the proof of this concept came in Vietnam. At first, armed helicopter gunships were used to escort troop ships. Landing areas would be strafed to clear them of enemy troops before the troop-carrying helicopters arrived. Soon, helicopters were used as fire support weapons in their own right. Ironically, their slow speed is one of their main advantages. they can spot small targets easier than fast-moving jet aircraft. And so they are precise enough that they can attack enemy positions very close to friendly forces. Nearly any kind of helicopter can be used as a gunship. Their capabilities in this role depend on their lift. The more lift, the more weapons they can carry. By the late 1960s, efforts were underway to design helicopters specifically for the gunship role. The first of these was the Bell AH-1 Cobra. The Cobra pioneered the classic configuration of the gunship. It does not have to carry troops or supplies, so it's much sleeker than a conventional utility helicopter. The armament systems are not strapped on as an afterthought, but designed into the airframe for better performance. The Cobra carries a two-man crew, a pilot and a gunner.
In the back seat, you have the pilot, and his function is to fly the helicopter. He has the capabilities of firing the turret systems, which in this particular helicopter are the 40mm and the 7.62, and he can do that with his helmet sight system. He also can fire the rocket systems, which is a 2.75-inch rocket, and he is then, in his role of flying the helicopter, he lines it up, make sure you're pointed at target when the gunner is shooting the tow missiles. And the gunner, he normally is looking out for targets, navigating, possibly, and when they do come upon a target situation where they have something to shoot at, they'll go ahead and either shoot with the HSS, the turret systems, or they'll shoot through the TSU, telescopic sight unit, using the turret systems, or if they come up with they have the proper type target, the tank, a hardened target, they'll go ahead and use the tow system, and he'll be the one that'll shoot the tow system using the telescopic sight unit.
The weapons of gunships are numerous. The standard armament consists of an array of machine guns. On specialized gunships like the Cobra, a minigun is carried in a special turret on the nose of the aircraft. Helicopters can also carry rocket pods. Each rocket has the explosive load of an artillery projectile, giving the helicopter the firepower of a small artillery battery. Helicopters are not armored and are vulnerable to ground fire. To survive on the modern battlefield, they use their maneuverability to hide behind terrain whenever possible.
Without using a train, we're going to be dead because of the enemy ADA systems. And we go ahead and we'll stay low to the ground, 0 to 25 feet above the ground or trees or whatever's in the way. And we'll go ahead and use valleys to maneuver in and ridges to hide behind. And we can also use trees if the trees are large enough just to hide behind.
Gunships bridge the gap between jet attack aircraft and armored vehicles. They're not as well armored as tanks, but they are much faster and can operate where no vehicle could go. They're not as fast as jets, but they can operate from nearly anywhere, from a grassy field or from a forest clearing. The key to their success is their flexibility. An entire helicopter squadron can be moved wherever they're needed without the elaborate support equipment required by jet aircraft.
We can move at a moment's notice. We're totally self-sufficient. And again, having helicopters and having different types of helicopters, we're able to load up everything that we own, basically, and go any place we have to.
Gunships evolved into tank hunters. Tanks are the most difficult of all targets for aircraft to hit. They're very difficult to see from a fast-moving jet attack plane. And they're so well armored that it takes a direct hit to knock them out. Helicopters can hover in an almost stationary position, allowing a very precise aim against tanks.
Some of the other aircraft are operating at higher speeds. It takes them maybe a little bit longer to acquire targets where we have the ability to hover and stay. We can sit down in an area that is undetectable by any enemy, and we're able to spot them.
The innovation that made tank hunting helicopters possible was the wire-guided anti-tank missile. Helicopters are too small to carry heavy bombs, but the new missiles weighed under 100 pounds and can punch through the thickest tank armor. The helicopter pops up to look for enemy targets from the shelter of the forest and scoots behind trees and hills to avoid enemy fire. When the time is right, the helicopter pops up and fires its missile. The missile takes several seconds to reach its target, guided all the way by the helicopter gunner. The gunner aims through a special sight which passes guidance corrections along a thin wire that trails behind the missile. This type of missile was first used in the Vietnam War. The most powerful variety of tank hunting helicopter is the specialized attack helicopter. The first of these was the AH-1 Cobra. The Cobra was originally designed as a gunship, armed with rockets and machine guns. After the Vietnam War, the United States Army's attention was turned to the defense of Europe, where the main threat was the tank. The Soviets followed suit with their own attack helicopter, the Mi-24 Hind. The Hind is much larger and faster than a Cobra, but not as maneuverable. The first attack helicopter developed in Western Europe is the Mangusta. The most powerful attack helicopter now in service with NATO is the American AH-64 Apache. The Apache was designed from the outset as a tank fighter.
Mainly, the Apache is a tank killer, and the Hellfire is its primary weapon. And therefore, everything's built around the Hellfire.
Unlike previous anti-tank missiles, the Hellfire is laser-guided. The Apache has a laser designator mounted in its nose, which fires an invisible beam of laser light at the enemy tank. The Hellfire has a special seeker in its nose, which looks for the coded laser light bouncing off the target.
It goes on reflected laser energy. When laser energy hits a target, you get a little bit of backscatter. The missile picks that up through the fire control computer on the codes and says, that's where I want to go, and it homes in on it.
The Apache operates at low altitude, skimming the terrain and hiding behind trees. This kind of flying is very dangerous. So in designing the Apache, considerable efforts were made to simplify the task of the pilot and the gunner. One of the most remarkable features is a special helmet which can be used to aim the guns and sighting systems.
What happened between the AH-1 and the Apache is that where we used to be mechanically linked to the turret through the helmet, we are now electronically linked in the Apache. And the way that works is that the cockpit is bathed in an infrared light, and the helmet has infrared sensors on it. The pilot and the co-pilot are both electronically linked to the fire control computer on the aircraft, and they're also bore-sighted to the air armament datum line on the aircraft. What that does is it tells the aircraft where the pilot is looking, which drives both the night vision system or sensing turrets and the gun turrets instantaneously to the pilot's line of sight.
This helmet is called the IHADS, for Integrated Helmet and Display Sighting System. It allows either crewman to operate the guns.
The entire system is really very easy, although it seems very complex. Basically what we have is the pilot wearing the helmet, either the front seater or the back seater. And on either side of his helmet, we have detectors that detect infrared radiation. Well, behind the pilot's seat and the co-pilot's seat, we have two emitters that send out infrared radiation to the pilot's helmet. These detectors pick it up, and all that information is fed into a computer, and the computer just triangulates how long it took for the ray to get from the emitter to the detector, and then it says, okay, the guy must be looking in this direction, and then points the gun in that direction. And the gun is so accurate that if it's off more than 3 degrees from where the pilot's looking with his naked eye, then it'll shut the system down and you can't use it. And these are the infrared detectors I was telling you about. And there are 2 on each side of the helmet, and they both look like small light bulbs. But if you look closer, they're a small prism-looking device, and they pick up the infrared radiation coming from the emitters. And of course, the helmet has a clip on the right-hand side, and that's for our HD or a helmet display unit. What we do is we clip this display onto our helmet, and it rotates down in front of our right eye, and we have a monocle that we look through, and that gives us various FLIR imagery, TV imagery, and our different symbols and that sort of thing.
The iHead's helmet not only drives the gun, but also controls the special sighting devices in front of the helicopters. These allow the helicopter to fly and operate at night. These sights depend on a FLIR sight, which stands for Forward-Looking Infrared.
In the older generation helicopters, we used a night vision goggle system, and what that did was amplify ambient light conditions at night. The Apache uses the forward-looking infrared radar concept, and what that does is it senses heat differences in the environment around the aircraft. And that presents itself in a monochromatic picture, a green and white picture, if you will, to the pilot of the scene that he sees in front of him. Allows him to fly both in snow, rain, night, and particularly in dusty or sandy conditions.
This system contains 2 parts. The lower turret, called the TADS for Target Acquisition and Designation System, contains the gunner's sights and the laser designator for the Hellfire missile. The upper part, the pilot night vision system, rotates independently and allows the pilot to fly the helicopter at night. These sophisticated night sights, combined with the helicopter's phenomenal agility, make the attack helicopter a very dangerous opponent of the tank. Helicopters have revolutionized naval warfare. Helicopters can turn a small warship into a mini aircraft carrier. They can scout ahead of the warship, giving it eyes 100 miles away. Larger helicopters are capable of carrying sophisticated anti-ship missiles. These missiles give the helicopter considerable punch. One of the main roles for shipboard helicopters is anti-submarine defense. Helicopters are ideally suited for this task since they can hover and drop sensors into the water. There are 3 methods for a helicopter to detect submarines. They can tow a magnetic anomaly detector behind them, which picks up slight magnetic disturbances caused by the submarine's steel hull. This gives the helicopter a very rough idea of where a submarine might be located. For a more precise location, the helicopter can lower a dipping sonar into the water. This sonar listens for sounds of the submarine, or can use an active sonar mode if the submarine is silent. The helicopter can also drop sonar buoys into the water. These work like a dipping sonar, but use a radio link to the helicopter instead of a cable. Once the submarine is detected, it can be attacked with a homing torpedo. Helicopters are so effective in this role because they can detect and attack submarines long before the submarine gets close enough to attack a surface warship. Helicopters are useful in a host of other tasks. They can be used to rescue downed air crews from the ocean. They can carry supplies from shore to ship. What is remarkable about modern helicopters is that they can carry out such missions even in very poor weather. This is made possible by an ingenious winch system. In bad weather, with the ship tossed about by the waves, the helicopter lowers a cable from its belly to the deck crew. This is attached to a special winch which pulls the helicopter aboard with great precision in spite of the waves. One of the most specialized uses for naval helicopters is mine sweeping. Large anti-mine helicopters like the Sea Stallion can tow special sleds behind them which cut the cables of tethered mines or detonate them with special acoustic or electromagnetic devices. Helicopters are also widely used by Marine forces, much as their Army counterparts. Marine amphibious assaults used small boats during World War II. Now helicopters can put the Marines ashore much more safely and with a greater element of surprise. One disadvantage of helicopters is their slow speed. Rotor design limits the maximum forward speed of a helicopter to about 200 miles per hour. For many helicopter roles, its vertical mobility is more important than speed. But for some roles, like troop transport, higher speeds are desirable. The solution to this problem may appear in the not-too-distant future in the form of tilt rotors. Tilt-rotor aircraft look like a cross between a helicopter and an airplane. The engines are mounted in pods at the end of the wingtip. By rotating the engine pod, it can be made to operate vertically like a helicopter or horizontally like a conventional fixed-wing aircraft. The United States Marine Corps plans to build the MV-22 Osprey as a troop transporter. It would be the first vertical lift aircraft of its type. Even with the advent of the tilt rotor, the helicopter will remain a vital element on the battlefield. Innovations such as advanced night vision systems, laser-guided missiles, and new rotor technology will continue to expand the roles of the combat chopper.
Firepower, the world's largest and most complete videocassette series on contemporary military technology. There are many more titles in this series which you can order now. If you want the latest in today's advanced weapons systems in the air, on land, and at sea, look no further. For program titles and information on how to order, call us at 1-800-377-7773 and get Firepower.